Okay, so our next speaker is Sabby Dhalu, who is the co-convener of Stand Up to Racism, and you may know that Stand Up to Racism is one of the national organisations that have called the demonstration, the national demonstration on 16th of July. It's also an organisation that's been heavily involved in taking people over to Calais and building that solidarity with the refugees there. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important meeting. Obviously, anti-racism is clearly one of the priorities for the left at the present moment in time. And I'd like you to cast your mind back to the election of the Tory Lib Dem coalition back in 2010, because what we saw then was the Tory-led government, literally the Liberal Democrats were just a junior partner in that government. What we saw then was the Tory-led government saying, we need to stir up racism in the context of austerity in order to divide, distract and scapegoat immigrant communities for austerity. So they were scapegoating black communities, Muslim communities and immigrant communities, and the whole purpose of it was to divide the working class and distract the working class in the context of austerity. And I think they really made their agenda very clear. Back in 2011, in February, I'm sure many of you will remember that David Cameron made this famous speech in Munich where he undermined multiculturalism, he attacked the Muslim community, saying that they needed to integrate more, that they were segregated and so on. But what was significant was not that he was saying that, because let's not forget, a lot of Labour politicians, Tony Blair, David Blunkett, and Labour politicians have made similar comments in the previous Labour government. What was significant about that was that he chose to make that speech on the same day that the English Defence League held their biggest ever march in Luton. And he knew that march was taking place, and he made a deliberate attempt to actually chime what he was saying with the racist movement on the ground. So that was just like we saw in the 1970s with Enoch Powell blowing the dog whistle and National Front marching. That was David Cameron doing the same thing, and the EDL march this time. And so the difference, however, is whereas Enoch Powell was on the fringes of the Conservative Party in the 1970s, he was fired from the cabinet after he made that speech. David Cameron is a Prime Minister. This is racism at the heart of the Tory government. And we saw a continuation of this throughout their term of office, right up until the 2015 election. And obviously, to our horror, the Tories were an overall majority, only just, but nevertheless they were an overall majority in May 2015 last year. And all I can say is that since the Tories came to power in 2015, in May 2015, I have never seen anything like it. I have been working in the anti-racist movement for around 15 years, and I have never seen anything like this. We have seen an unrelenting racist offensive with the government absolutely intent on implementing austerity, attacking junior doctors, attacking teachers, and decimating the living standards of the majority of the population. In order to do this, they have been stirring up on racism. We have actually, I don't think we've seen a government or a Prime Minister actually advocating racism in the same way as we have seen this government do so. So what have we seen? We saw refugees being described as swarms. This is comparing human beings in need, fleeing wars that our government has been partly responsible for, being described as insects. We saw David Cameron again in the House of Commons standing up at Prime Minister's Question Time, attacking Jeremy Corbyn for having the decency to visit refugees in Calais and understand what they were going through and work out a policy to help and defend refugees. David Cameron stood up and he attacked Jeremy Corbyn for doing that on Holocaust Memorial Day and attacked him for meeting with a bunch of migrants. This is deliberate, racist, derogatory language aimed at refugees, and the whole purpose of it is to scapegoat and distract and divide the working class in the context of austerity. We've also seen a whipping up of Islamophobia. We've seen speech after speech, policy announcement after policy announcement, and legislation like the extremism bill attacking the Muslim communities. The extremism bill goes much further than the prevent strategy. That will actually have more far-reaching consequences in terms of not just the Muslim community, but I think those on the left, the trade union movement that want to strike, anyone literally that disagrees with the government could be described as an extremist if this legislation is allowed to be passed. And so I think it's extremely important that we, at this crucial moment in time, unite against racism. Because what happens when the Prime Minister and the Tories go on the racist offensive? Well, what we've just seen is what happens. We see people like, to his right in the Conservative Party, going that much further in the way they attack migration and the free movement of labour and so on, in the form of people like Michael Gove. And then people like Nigel Farage go even further than that and say, launch posters that are reminiscent of Nazi propaganda. And I say that not because Farage is a Nazi or Farage is a fascist, but because that breaking point poster is almost identical to a poster that the Nazis used in the 1930s. Except instead of Syrian refugees on that poster, you had Jewish people on that poster. And so Farage went that step further, and don't forget, he also stirred it up on the Cologne attacks. He whipped that up and basically linked immigration to this country with sexual assaults and so on. And so you had this toxic racist atmosphere in the referendum. But this is what happens when so-called mainstream politicians stir up racism. People to your right will say, okay, well, I'll just go that much further. They feel that they've got license to go that step further. And then what happened? Well, a fascist thought on the same day that Nigel Farage released that poster, he thought it was okay to go and murder, execute in public a Labour MP. And it was only just over 2 weeks ago, but it doesn't feel like it, does it? It feels like months ago. And it's not really being talked about in the same way as though, let's say an ISIS-type terrorist attack had occurred or murdered a Labour politician or any other politician or anyone else for that matter. This would be, widespread coverage. But you didn't see this attack, this murder of Joe Cox MP being treated as a terrorist attack or being discussed in the same terms as you would see an attack by somebody claiming to represent ISIS and so on and so forth, which in itself illustrates the racism that we see today. And so all I can say is now, regardless of how you voted in the referendum, we must stand up and we must unite against racism, because we have seen a rise in racist attacks in the last week or so. We've seen numerous different communities, African, Caribbean communities, Muslim communities, other Asian communities like Indian communities, Hindu or Sikh, Jewish communities, Polish communities, German and Spanish communities saying, look, we are actually getting xenophobic and racist attacks in the context of what's happened in the last week or so. And I think our job is to unite against racism and to stand up against this level of racism, regardless of how you voted, because it's not about how you voted, it's about understanding that there is a racist climate here. It's been whipped up in the context of austerity by the Tory government, and we must unite and stand up to racism. And so join us on the 16th of July, but also join us on the demonstration on the 16th of July against austerity and against racism. But also please make sure you register for the conference on the 8th of October. And please also join Stand Up to Racism, because we need people to affiliate your trade union branches, and we need individuals to join, because we really need that sort of support from you guys, because we are now a formal campaign and this is what we're asking people to do. So thank you for your support, and thank you again for inviting me to this meeting.
Okay, so my third speaker is a Labour councillor for Islington, Councillor Michelle Safnagar, and she's also the director of the International Lighthouse Project, which is a project that does educational courses for, voluntary educational courses for young people as well as adults.
thank you very much. I think she forgot to introduce me as a refugee. I will never feel shame to say I'm a refugee. That is who I am. Today people call me counselor, but they forgot yesterday I was a refugee. Today people are happy when I'm contributing in British society. They forgot when I was a refugee they was neglecting me. They didn't like even to see my face. Let me tell you something. There is no place like home. No matter what, there is no place like home. I left my country very young. Sometimes I don't have a clear idea about how my father looks like, my mother. I never said goodbye to them. I didn't come in UK for holiday trip. I didn't come to enjoy the cold weather. I just ran for me to survive. Arrived in UK, it wasn't any easy situation. Sometimes people try to ask me, when you arrived compared to today, what difference? I said, there is not a difference. Even when I came, they knew what was going on in my country, and they tried really to push me to go back. For what? For me to die. It's the same thing we're still seeing today. There is not difference. Only difference is just now, everyone is aware about the situation. People are stand up together in solidarity to try to expose what was going on under the surface. That is just the difference. I was shocked on Tuesday. I'm a counselor in Islington, doing my counsel duty. Someone approached me to say, Micheline, we know you are the one as well, you are working very hard to bring your fellow refugees to this country to take our housing, our schools. Why are you still here? Go back to your country. That breaks my heart. We have been blamed for everything. The problem for referendum is about we, refugees. Housing problem, refugees. Health problem, refugees. Please, for God's sake, we are human beings. The same people are blaming us. They are the same people that are destroying my country. They never seen in that way what they did in my life. To be in a country, I don't have a father, I don't have a mother, I don't have a sister, I don't have a brother. It's not easy. But you guys, you are my brothers, you are my sisters. I believe in one thing, we have to stand in solidarity to say no to hate crime. It's damaging people's life. How can it be you are living amongst people you don't know who is your friend and who is your enemies? It's very difficult. Nothing can separate us. All of us, into our vein, we do have a red blood. No matter how our colors. Even when we are breathing, we can't say this breath is for white people, black people, yellow people, pink people. No, it's the same air we are breathing. Why are we allowed media to destroy us? Today, because we are refugees, we are the cause of every bad situation in the UK. If this kind of situation carry on, it will not going to be only refugees or migrants. It will going to pass on from one generation to another generation. All of us will going to face this. The people that created that, then family are safe. No one can attack them because we can't reach them. But you and I, it's easy for us, this attack, to move on from one step to another step. We need really to say no. Even refugees, they are human beings. On the 19th, when we tried to bring heads to Calais, I had a chance to speak with French officers. English is my fourth language. Thank you. I'm learning and I'm still learning. When I spoke with them, it's a confused politics is going on. They asked me a question. You guys, you are coming from UK, yes. When you came, before you reach us, who stopped you the first? I said, our UK police. They are the one that stopped you, yes. What they told you? Why they stopped you? Because they said, you French people, you are not collaborate or you don't like us to bring eggs. That is what they told you. I said, yes, that is what they told me. And they said, okay. After that, they are the one that opened the gate for you to be here. You don't see they are playing politics, keeping accusing each other. It's a politics they are playing. They know what they are doing. But you guys, you have to be strong and stick together. That is what I'm asking all of you today. Please, let's be strong. Let's stick together. We have to defeat this is in front of us. It's not a joke. It's our future. It's our life, future of the next generation. Let's take it in seriously matter. People are dying, people are suffering. Your help can save even one life. It's very important. If I ask you a question, do you know the price of even this building? People can give us a price. Do you know a price of any cars? People can give us a price. But what is the price of life of a human being? There is not a price. Life is a pressure, and it's too short. We need to enjoy it and to take it in much value. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that wonderfully moving speech. It gives us all something to think about. And so our final speaker this evening is Weyman Bennett. Weyman is a co-convener of Stand Up to Racism alongside Sabby, but he's also a member of the SWP Central Committee. Weyman.
Thank you very much. I think we're at a critical stage about how we're going to treat refugees. And I think one of the most important things that happened was we have to cast our mind back. Over the last 20 years, when we've tried to defend refugees, there hasn't been, to be honest, a mass response. But after Baby A-Line was seen washed up on the shore, there was a mass response across the whole of Europe. 1 in 3 people have given to Calais. And to be honest, it was that forced and the refugees themselves marching up to the border and demanding to be treated as human beings, and the solidarity that they received began to change the situation. And the pressure for that is not going to go away. And part of what's taking place now, in terms of the backlash, in terms of the attempt to divide and rule, I think it matters what people do. You see, when we did the convoy, when we went up to the border, there's an argument, there's free trade, isn't there? It's easy to go from one place to the other. In fact, I don't know if people noticed, but the biggest diamond in the world was sold. I counted, it went across 7 borders. The biggest diamond in the world, it was dug out in Africa, and it went across 7 borders, and it didn't need a passport. I mean, no one asked where it's from, what it's doing, why are you doing this way, how comes you're so hard, right? They didn't ask any questions at all. They just let it go through. And it tells you everything about the border and what the border represents, and why we have to have solidarity with people at that end. The truth is, when you talk about the Mediterranean, it's become a graveyard for the thousands of people that are left to drown. The fact that they can mobilise the Navy to do something about it tells us what the problem is. It's interesting, I want to thank the speakers for speaking, because the 2 things they have in common, in terms of the places they've gone away from, is what? War. War, actually. Actually, one of the reasons why they should immediately admit anybody from Iraq is because of what's going to happen to the Chilcot inquiry. If it goes right, the people that are responsible for it, they're here because we bombed there. That's what actually happened. We bombed people's homes, and on top of that, people started talking about how people dressed, and how people are, and how women should behave. They used double speak. Everything they said was the opposite, actually. We're liberating you by bombing you. We freed you by killing you. Actually, it reminded me of something that happened in Vietnam when they bombed a place called when they bombed in those places. They said we destroyed a village because we saved it. And it's a continuation of that level in the way that they treat people. And it's important that we understand that this level of degradation, if people want to understand where the backlash came from, I tell you what's really surprising. After all the things Sabby said, it's amazing that there is even more racist attacks, actually, because it's been endorsed from the very top of society, not just from Farage. What's interesting is that they've found it hard going. They've had to say that they're not racist. Farage is a racist, but he has to say I'm not. Why does he have to say that? I tell you why, because when you went to the border, it's true that you do get racism. But I tell you, when we said that we should collect for children in Calais, people said there's not kids, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't treat people like that. I don't believe they treat people. You show the picture and people were like, oh my God, how can you treat a child like that? Aren't these people human? I knew they were bad, but I didn't realise they were that bad. In other words, what people expect is that first they hear the lies, that people have come 5,000 miles across the Sahara to wherever it is to claim benefits somewhere in Tottenham. I mean, if anybody showed them a picture of it, the idea that people do that. In fact, actually, if anybody does do that, they should be let in automatically. Actually, because if they show the skill and determination to do that, then they should be allowed actually just to get it. But the truth of it is about divide and rule. It is what Tiberius put forward. And that's the reason why we can actually change it. I tell you one of the most amazing things I saw was when I went to Greece, actually. I went to Greece, and to be honest, I was very worried about going to Greece because of Golden Dawn and stuff like that. And I went on a demonstration. There was large numbers of people, no jobs, no prospects, whatever it is. You know what they were doing? Supporting refugees. So you know this idea, automatically, if you're poor and you're working class or you're white, you're automatically going to support Nazis. It's not true. Because their question was, they were firmly clear about one thing. It was the cuts that was attacking them. It was the attacks on their pensions was not coming from refugees. And it's important about the July demonstration is to find out who's to blame. Oscar Wilde said once, you're either looking in the gutter at the shit going by, or you're looking at the stars and wishing you were up there. And part of our job is to orientate people to look at the stars and have the confidence to be able to do that. And that requires organisation. See, when we went up to the border, inside the convoy. It's not our first convoy, by the way, it's our fifth, our sixth. In fact, Claire for Calais told me the reason why she set up Claire for Calais was because she came with us for the first time to Calais, that we took them. In other words, we gave solidarity, and it was solidarity, but something else. When people say, you can feed somebody for one day, and that's great, but when people ask us what's our aim about the jungle, is to eradicate it off the face of the earth and get those people out of it. We want the jungle shut. We don't want the jungle there. I mean, sometimes, I'll be honest, I really respect what people do, but keeping people in the same position totally is not what we're about. And that's partly why it's very important that we have the conference. Because when you see those summits, you see people have those summits and nothing changes. There's no plan to actually do anything. There's no plan to make sure something actually changes. One of the people I support is Jeremy Corbyn. I remember saying I used to go to meetings, and I'll be honest with you, we used to go to, I remember Jeremy turning up for the meeting for Michelin to be allowed to, because he was the local MP, to say, right, Michelin should be here, and she'll add something fundamental to Islington. It's true. You can see it fundamentally there. That's true. And he was right. He said there was nothing, the border was a way of keeping people out. I think people like that should be supported, not attacked. And to be honest, some of the people attacking them, when you look down the list of the wars that mean that people had to flee their country, they signed on the dotted line. They signed on the dotted line. In other words, they are partly responsible for the creation of that. And therefore, I don't see how they've got no right to attack people like Jeremy Corbyn, because Jeremy Corbyn is one of the people that's argued against that. But I also think, I haven't got very much time, and I know people want to come in with the hard work that they've done. Without the work that people have done on the ground, the thousands of pounds, the government has said that the majority of aid has been raised by individuals. It's not been raised by government. More aid has come from individuals than by a government. What does that mean? That means that solidarity, somebody can imagine someone else miles away and have hope in that. And for us, that's an important thing, because solidarity is the first step for change. Because not accepting that David Cameron had the answer. See, to tell you the truth, I was glad when David Cameron went. I was one of those people cheering. I'm sure the pigs were cheering as well, do you mean, in terms of sorry, I shouldn't bring the tenor of the discussion down, whatever it is, in terms of he's been brought to justice for his behaviour, right? But nevertheless, I was cheering when he went down, because all those statements he made, actually, I don't think he actually contributed or did anything good. He deserved to go. He deserved to go for all the statements that he made before. But what else is going to come is up to us. See, I think we've got a big job. It can go two ways. It can go the way of blaming refugees and stopping people from coming in, or it can go the other way, where the demonstrations lead to something else. This is not a poor country. It's not true that they're actually, George Osborne has suddenly turned around and said we find £250 billion in 24 hours. Where did he find it? In his back pocket? Oh yeah, all this time we've been told there's no money, he found it. Therefore, the potential for fighting for more exists in every place, in every workplace, in every school, and we have to build this. If we build this, we do two things. We defend refugees, but we also defend ourselves, because internationalism, I believe, begins at home. All of us are 24 hours away from being in the same situation as a refugee in any society. And we have to make sure that that solidarity isn't just about giving to people, it's about defending ourselves against the racism, the sexism, the Islamophobia that they want to use to divide us. And the role that people play can make that complete difference. And so the demonstration on July the 16th we have to build, and also the conference, we have to give some kind of guidance that it doesn't stay the same, that things begin to change. That's our potential, that's our aim. Thank you very much.
Okay. They say that the refugees cannot come to Europe because there is not enough place in houses, not enough places in schools, in health centers and so on. There are 11 million houses in Europe who are empty. So 11 million people, they are welcome, at least. That's a very simple equation. And I want to give the example of the Greek movement. We're very proud because we opened the borders. We opened the borders on the islands. We sent people there. They violated the law. They stopped the Coast Guard of pushing back the boats. The Coast Guard, they were even using knives to bring down the boats. And so a lot of people were murdered there, pregnant women with their children. This is the place where the ruling classes, the European Union, they conducted one of the most horrible crimes against humanity in the Sea of the Mediterranean. Not in the 30s, but in 2015 and 16. They're criminals. They are not just making war against the refugees in their countries, but they're sending NATO forces, Coast Guard, they're putting fences, they're drowning people, and they behave like civilized politicians who make a deal between European Union and Turkey. So the only response to them is to fight to open the border and also to open the cities. This is another slogan that we're pushing in Greece, and we're very proud that in the Athens of crisis, we oppose our government and their plan to put the refugees outside the cities, in tents, in some terrible small block houses like that. And we're very proud because we occupied 2 hotels, 2 schools, and we go on. We're going to build thousands of refugees in the center of Athens because we oppose the policy of making ghettos for refugees. And the people say that where's the money coming and going for the refugees? I mean, really, the solidarity of the people, it was a class solidarity, and it was an action of fighting against racist Europe and all those who wanted to close the border. We don't have enough money, but we have enough money to fight them. And we're going to give this money for the refugees. We're going to organize social structures for the refugees, and we're going to impose to the local authority and the governments to take these structures, because we need social structures for refugees, and we cannot go just with solidarity. We are going to change the policy of the government, whether they like it or not. We have the power of the workers, and we're going to oppose this.
Yeah.
So just to let people know that Comrade does need to get off the flight and he's going back to Greece, so that's why we did that.
My name is Chris Marine from Solidarity in Australia. In Australia, our version of the Tories have put bashing refugees at the front and centre of Australian politics. which sadly has bipartisan support from the Labor Party. It's immensely heartening here to see Jeremy Corbyn stand up and speak at refugee rallies. In Australia, it was the Labor Party that helped set up offshore processing. At the moment, you've got over 2,000 people who have been in prison for nearly 3 years now on Manus Island and Nauru, offshore hellholes. The Australian government uses the Navy to turn refugee boats back to Indonesia. But at the same time, there is a growing and vibrant refugee movement that I've been part of. We built coalition, unions, political groups, religious groups that put 20,000 people on the streets. Politics is very important to that. We won an argument that it didn't have no demands, but the demands had to be to close the camps of Manus and Nauru. And one of the things that has done, the grassroots movement, is given confidence to other people to take action. So when an asylum seeker in a Queensland school was ripped out of her school and put into detention halfway across the country, the teachers there went on strike. When there were 267 vulnerable asylum seekers from Nauru and Manus Island who are in Australia, these were asylum seekers who are here for medical treatment because there's no medical treatment on the offshore camps. These are people who have been raped by guards. They're people who've been attacked by guards, who've got brain damage from being attacked by some of the accidents, who've got cancer, who are getting bullets removed from them from where they come from. There was a baby Asha, who received serious burns to her body because with her mother, she was actually born in detention. This is a baby who's born in detention. She's known nothing but detention for 3 years. In a mouldy tent, only thing to sterilise is that one of those hot water urns. It fell on her, she got burned, she got brought to Australia. But because of the confidence that people got from those demonstrations, the doctors and health workers in the hospital, once they fixed the burns, refused to return her back to detention. They held her in the hospital. There was a vigil outside the hospital, thousands of people for 3 days, until the government backed down. Those 267 people are still in Australia. They haven't been moved, despite us losing a high court case. We still haven't won the closing of the camps, but the Australian election is currently on a knife edge, whether Labor gets in. We've set out to make refugees an issue in the Labor Party, despite some people saying we shouldn't deal with Labor at all. If Labor does get in, at the last Labor conference, we had a rally with Labor for Refugees. We split the Labor Party down the middle. 40% of them voted against their current policies. It will be an issue from day one. We are confident that we will close those camps. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Maggie Fulshaw. I work as a practice manager in Tower Hamlets. And when the convoys to Calais started, we thought, what can we do in general practice to build solidarity and support? So we sent messages around to practices for the November convoy and raised quite a lot of money and a lot of goods. We collected 21 tents across different practices, took those over. Then in February, we had another collection, and that really sort of got people excited, particularly because 12 people from practices across the borough said that they wanted to go. And so they went across. We raised a massive amount of money. One GP took a jeep with a trailer, and we had a load of building material, fire extinguishers, a whole host of stuff. One group of workers who don't get a very good press are GP receptionists. But what the receptionists did is they used their own money, they went out shopping, they got together at lunchtime, and this was in practices across the borough. They made up toiletry bags for men, and I went around the practices and collected boxes and boxes of toilet bags for men, which we took over from that had been done by the GP receptionists. One GP who came with us in February usually runs the London Marathon, and this year he did it to raise money for the kitchen in Calais and raised about £2,000 for that. We had a rally in the London Muslim Centre, and people from across the borough, from different church groups, community groups, trade unions, were part of that rally. And we had a discussion after that about what can we do next. And we thought it'd be good to have a different kind of thing. We've had marches, we've had rallies, we've had raising money, and obviously that's continuing. So we're having a cultural event, and by absolutely fantastic chance, it's on the 17th of July, which is the day after the demonstration against austerity and racism, which is great. And we've got, we wrote to Tower Hamlets Council and asked them to give us a venue. They've given us this fantastic venue in a local park, and we've invited the mayor to speak at it. It's sponsored by Unison, by the NUT, by the London Muslim Centre, the local branch of the British Medical Association, LGBT plus versus Islamophobia, and also by Médecins Sans Frontières. And Médecins Sans Frontières have given us access to their photo library. They've given us money to have photographs printed off. And one of the things and we've got musicians, poets, dancers, and we're going to have speakers as well. We've got 4 Syrian refugees who are going to speak. Some came via the jungles, some came different routes. And one of the things that Médecins Sans Frontières has said is that they're very interested in the idea of this, and it's actually travelling around to other areas. So we'll have the photographs. So if other people want to do something similar in their area, then do get in touch, because, you know, there's photographs, and we're getting about 100 photographs printed off and doing it by region, so Calais, Dunkirk, Greece, you know, different areas where the camps are. So, you know, we've actually, in Tower Hamlets, we've got a proud history of fighting back against racism. We got rid of Derek Beacon, who was the first BNP councillor to be elected in this country. We stopped the UPL coming to Tower Hamlets. And this, raising the solidarity for refugees is part of that struggle.
Comrades, I'm from Bradford, and a few weeks ago we organized a really good solidarity event with refugees in Bradford in order to support the convoy to Calais on the 18th of June. In the event we raised £650 on the night, and then £250 donations from NUT. And of course what you do with this, you want to take it to Calais. So then we decided we're going to join to a convoy with our comrades from Leeds, Wakefield, and of course Bradford. We prepared everything, tins of tomatoes, chickpeas, and so on and so forth, whatever you can find. We load them on the van, and we started going. At 6 o'clock in the morning, we went to Folkestone. We were away from this lot, you know, we thought we may go through from there, they're going to be blocked. But we were so lucky. We passed through the British border control. British police said, "Oh, where are you going to? We're going to Calais." "Oh, go through." And when we get the French border, the picture was very different. As soon as we got there, French border police stopped us. "Where are you going?" "We are going to Calais." Other people were passing through. They were not even being checked. We were stopped. We kept 2 hours. We detained 2 hours by the French border control. Myself, and then I'm a UCU member, an NUT member, and other young people from different backgrounds, 19 of us. Our entry was refused without any reason. Our passport was stamped, refused to enter. And the French translation and the English translation, what it said, we are on the grounds of, if I can find here, is it too small, this bloody thing? We are danger to French national security. Imagine, Weyman mentioned about Diamond, 7 borders passed through. If we were delivering boxes of iPads, we were going to, "Oh, you go through, it's a free trade." But we were delivering something more dangerous than anything. That was solidarity. Yeah. This government and French government, they do not want solidarity. Because solidarity is the key point. If we hadn't organized this solidarity, it would have been all right. I heard one of the French officers was saying, 1 or 2 is all right, but you are too many. Too many is not good for them, because that solidarity will bring something. That solidarity will take hope to refugees. I think we need to make absolutely clear that this side of the border, people will carry on taking stuff over there, whatever happens. And we have to make sure that loud and clear, refugees are welcome here. We have to make that.
Yeah, I mean, I think events are moving very fast, aren't they, at the moment, particularly in the last week, and perhaps we should have called this meeting actually after the Leave vote, Solidarity with Refugees. And some people have argued that the Leave vote, the vote to leave the EU, was all about racism, and feel very demoralised about it. I actually think it's a lot more complex than that. I think there was a lot about kicking back at the establishment, but as the speakers have said, how could racism not be a part of it when the mainstream campaigns both use racism and scapegoating as such a big part of it? And it has involved some racists, and I think this makes some challenges for us. We need to think about that, although it's worth knowing that only 13 Nazis turned up in Southampton today, and I think 1,200 anti-Nazi protesters. I'm not sure how important they are, totally. But the point is that it means we have got some new challenges. And one of those is we can't concede on some of the arguments, and very much linked to refugees is this idea of freedom of movement, which some people who are anti-racist are beginning to concede to. We have to stand very good. We are for people's freedom of movement. But you see, what I want to say is everything that's been done in the last year that people have talked about, I think has helped shape the terrain for where we are now. The tremendous solidarity with refugees. And this is the interesting thing, isn't it? I think actually the majority of the British public were absolutely horrified by seeing people drowning in the Mediterranean, the horrific images. It's been an outpouring of sympathy in that way. And I think for a lot of people, actually giving to charity, giving to the donations people talked about, it's the first real political act, isn't it? But the fact is it then allows you to have a much bigger political discussion, because we're not just about the charity, we are about solidarity, about opening the borders and taking those political arguments. But if we're engaged in every workplace, college, university, street, doing those collections, you can have that discussion, and we need to do that a lot more now. And I think that because it's quite contradictory. I think sometimes people have great sympathy for refugees and can always then buy into the idea of, but are migrant workers the problem? And we have to be able to do the both, take on the refugee solidarity and use that to help shift the situation. That's about intervening in sometimes quite contradictory, sometimes harder arguments, but showing it in practice. And I just want to emphasise about the 16th of July demonstration, actually. It's called Jointly by Stand Up to Racism and the People's Assembly. The slogans are no to austerity, no to racism, kick the Tories out as I understand it, that's right, isn't it? But the point is, it's not just another demo. This has to be as big as possible, because it's about us saying, we are the majority. We are the people that can take on to give confidence to whole sections of the movement. So I would urge people, we have to go back to the networks that have been created through the tremendous solidarity that has gone on since last late autumn, late summer, when people went over to Calais in the first place, so recently. Go back to those networks and say, it's brilliant you've collected that money and shown solidarity beyond the streets on the 16th of July, help beyond that movement to take on these newer questions that are also facing us at the moment.
I went to Calais with the Stand Up to Racism conference organised by Hall. That was probably about 8 months ago. So it's changed a lot since then. Half it's been bulldozed actually. But a lot of it stuck with me. It's probably one of the experiences that changed me the most. I'm not going to go into too much detail of what I saw there, because you can kind of imagine it's horrible. There's people with no tents and no toilets, and little kids with no shoes. I met people my age, 17-year-olds from Afghanistan, chatting to me kind of quite friendly, as if someone your age is chatting to them, but they were talking to me about experiences. The ones that can speak English a lot of the time actually worked with British soldiers. He talked to me about experiences that he's seen with British soldiers, and also about how the fact that once they were done with him, they beat him up and left him. But yeah, when I got back, I think a lot of people on this team, they come back and they think, I need to go back there, I need to help these people. And a lot of people that I spoke to as well said, how can I go over there, how can I go volunteer and do this? And then it that was my main thoughts about it. And then you realise that actually, it's brilliant if people want to go over there and help and volunteer, and I'd encourage them. But actually, where we can do most change is over here and organising, getting people's support over here. It's the same government that we're fighting, that they're fighting. It's the same fight. I think that's why something like Marxism and something like socialism is so important, because it links up all these different fights. The refugees fight is the same as our fight against austerity, because it's the same government implementing them. The government wants to direct the focus away from austerity onto the refugees. That's the same fight. It's the same fight against Islamophobia, because a lot of the rhetoric that was built up against Muslims was actually built up invading countries like Afghanistan, Syria, the countries that a lot of these people have actually come from. Same as the fight against climate change. A lot of the people that haven't been fleeing wars have been fleeing drought, famine, things that have been caused by actually a lot of the problems that factories and climate change in Europe have been causing. I think it's important to do work going over to Calais and expressing solidarity, but just to bring it back to the topic of the talk, it's really important it becomes, it's solidarity, not charity. You know, like, these people are the same fight as us. We're not just helping out the poor, pity, you know, the kind of pity these poor refugees. These are people fighting the same government, fighting the same problems, fighting capitalism in the same, while they're dealing with capitalism in the same way. And I think it's really important to link up all these struggles into the same fight.
Yeah, thanks to all the speakers. I want to speak a little bit about the sort of solidarity that we're doing in our school, because it's got a double edge. What we're doing, we did Refugee Week in school. What we're doing is we're writing letters to the children in Calais. But this is not just about showing solidarity with children in Calais. Actually, the whole point of it was undercutting the awful racist crap that came out around the referendum. And it's not just for kids, actually. You see, I think my daughter was on the convoy to Calais that got stopped, and luckily, having a good socialist background, she absolutely knew not to sign any form. And firstly, she shouldn't read, and secondly, she hadn't done anything. But there is an argument there, actually, and there was a bit of an argument on the way back, I think, where people were saying, actually, if we say we're not part of the convoy, then maybe we'll be let through. Well, I think, you know, we have to actually talk about what open borders actually is, because I have a son who's got a Chinese wife, and for the second time in 2 years, she's been refused a tourist visa. This idea that there's free movement within Europe or around the world is absolutely ridiculous. I think that solidarity, it's absolutely brilliant, I think, that people are collecting and showing that solidarity. But I think as socialists, what we have to say is, yes, we want to get the aid there. We certainly don't want people starving. But the absolute way to help these people is to open the borders. And there can be no compromising over that. Because unfortunately, we are seeing some people on the left going, well, you know, actually maybe we do need to talk about controlled immigration. And actually what that really is about is they've got a look at the working class that is falling for this idea that says, really, people voted for Brexit because they're all white racists, and the only reason we'll get those votes is if we compromise. I don't believe the Brexit vote was all about racism. Certainly it has got an element in there, but I tell you what, it doesn't defeat racism by compromising with it. The way to defeat racism is to absolutely say, these people are our brothers and sisters. Corporations move around the world, diamonds move around the world, there is no problem there. Our brothers and sisters should be able to move around the world and go wherever they want to, no compromising, open borders.
Okay, after this speech I'm going to call the sister with the hijab, and then that's going to be the final speaker. I'm going to apologise, there's been loads more hands that I haven't been able to take.
I'll be very quick. In a previous session on fighting the far right in Europe, it was said countless concrete examples in Austria and Germany that the far right don't create racism, actually they feed off the racism in the mainstream. And this is why I agree absolutely with Sabby when she talks about the crocodile tears, the hypocrisy of David Cameron, who argues that he's concerned about racism, when in the last several years he's pushed a racist offensive in this country that's created the kind of climate, the horrific murder of Joe Cox and the kind of racist backlash that we've seen over the last week. And what we have to absolutely say, that the 16th that other people have talked about, is about us not letting David Cameron get away with the hypocrisy that he tries to pull up now. We know where the blame should lie. We know where the blame for racism and where austerity should lie. It should lie with these people, and that's why we're saying on the 16th they must go. And let's be absolutely clear. Today, actually, I was on a Remain demonstration, not necessarily because I agree with them on the EU, but actually I know there's a lot of people there who are motivated by fighting racism. And I'm not looking at people now, whether you're Remain or whether you leave. I'm looking at you now, are you anti-racist? Are you, or are you the kind of people that want to divide us with racism? Are you anti-austerity, or are you the kind of person that wants to keep the status quo? These are the only divisions we need to know going forward. We need to be, there's absolutely something that was said in the last session, we need the people who are providing an alternative, the people who are saying no to racism and no to a society where austerity is necessary, because the kind of people that want to keep the status quo are the kind of people that have turned, as Weyman said, the Mediterranean into a bloody death ground. We have to say no to that kind of hypocrisy. And it starts on July the 6th, so I encourage everyone to take leaflets away, bring along people you know, and start building that alternative, starting from there.
Again, apologies for the huge number of people I didn't get to take, but I think it's a fantastic discussion. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring our speakers back just to sum up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by firstly saying I agree with many of the contributions, but in particular, I just wanted to highlight Amy Leather's contribution, because I very much agree that in the current situation, it is absolutely crucial that we do not concede to some of the racist arguments that are being peddled at the moment, and I think you made the point as well, that we have to defend freedom of movement, and that we have to defend both refugee rights and the rights of all migrants to come to this country, and that is absolutely crucial. So I just wanted to echo that and say that I 100% agree with that. But then I also wanted to say that in my speech I focused very much on the challenges that we face, the situation of rising racism at the moment. But what I'd like to focus on now in my summary is the rise in the mobilisation against racism, because I think it's important to remember that. And what we're trying to do is to build a mass anti-racist movement that is similar to the Rock Against Racism and the anti-Nazi League movement that we had in the 1970s. That is the movement that we need today. We need to have a movement that celebrates multiculturalism, that celebrates diversity, and creates an anti-racist climate and atmosphere that makes it hard for racists to call people the N-word or call people the P-word, as you know, we've seen some of that happening over the last week or so, and some more violent attacks. So we need a movement that creates that anti-racist climate and atmosphere. And I think we can do that because in the last year, for example, we have seen, well, in the last 3 years or so, we have seen some of the biggest demonstrations against racism that we've seen in, 2 decades or so, starting with the demonstration that we correctly called in 2014 on UN Anti-Racism Day, which had about 10,000 people, surpassed our expectations of, what we expected on such demonstrations, because we'd been calling anti-fascist demonstrations against the English Defence League for quite a long time. But this was the first time we actually called an anti-racist demo that was against scapegoating immigrants, against Islamophobia, and against, this racist climate in which fascists were actually growing at the time. And it was a huge demonstration. In 2015 was even bigger than that, with around 15,000. And this year, there was around 20,000 people. So we have seen some of the biggest mobilisations against racism, and we haven't seen this since the 1990s. And obviously, the day Jeremy Corbyn was announced leader of the Labour Party, we saw perhaps the biggest demonstration in defence of refugee rights. Certainly, people tell me that we hadn't seen such a big demo in defence of refugee rights since the 1970s. 100,000 people marched on the streets, and a third of the population actually gave or donated in some shape or form either goods or money to help refugees. This is huge, So there is a huge amount of, anti-racist feeling and sympathy in the British population. So I just want to echo that we must, build the anti-racist movement. Please join us on the 16th of July. Please come to the conference on the 8th of October, but please also become a member of Stand Up to Racism. Take out a standing order, give as much as possible as you can every month, because that's what we really need. We really need to have a kind of solid sort of basis that we can actually use to campaign on a regular basis. Because as you can see, 1 minute we're defending refugees, then we're having to defend freedom of movement and migrant rights and so on, Islamophobia, it's all systems go. So please help us, and well done for all your work. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mikhail's going to speak next.
I would like just to conclude today by saying, please, let's stay in solidarity. If you see anyone is blaming refugees, migrants, don't pass by. Let's stay together to say no, no one can divide us. If you can see hate crime because someone is black, refugees, migrant, please don't pass by, do something. In solidarity, we can win. Thank you very much.
So just before I bring Weyman in to speak last, Sabby's just going to read a statement from Talal Ahmed. He's a member of the Muslim Council of Britain. He really wanted to be here this evening, but he sent a statement of support instead.
Hi, thank you. Yes, Talal Ahmed is a member of the National Council of Muslim Council of Britain. He's also co-chair, along with Dave Ward, the Communication Workers Union General Secretary of Stand Up to Racism. And he just wanted to pass on this message because he's been delayed where he is today. So he said, "Dear friends, I'm sorry I am unable to join you in person. Bangladesh, my country of birth, experienced an unprecedented attack last night. I am sadly caught up in dealing with the media following this event. But my heart is with you, and I wish to make the following in respect of the developments following Brexit. Britain is a pluralistic nation, and we rightly pride ourselves on being a country of many colours, faiths and creed. Whilst we know there are fascists and racists, and in recent years they have gained more visibility, we have never anticipated the ugly, appalling and extremely alarming outbreak of racism manifesting into violence, which we have seen following Brexit. I do not believe it is in our interest to move away from the EU, but I respect people's will, and we should all work to build our country and to reach greatness. But this country belongs to all of us: black, white, Asian, African, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Sikh, people of other faiths and none. We must therefore stand firm to defeat bigotry, racism and Islamophobia. But friends, there is something more serious. Our politicians, with rare exception, fail to challenge, if not fueled, racism and Islamophobia. We must therefore speak louder to hold accountable politicians who peddle or tolerate hate. We must stand firm against politicians and for politicians who have shown courage and conviction for plurality, diversity, racial and religious equality. It is people like you who are the hope for the future. Let's continue our struggle to see off xenophobia and racism. Talal Ahmed, Muslim Council of Britain, National Council member.
I want to thank everybody for what they said today. And the question of intensifying the struggle is going to be important. I want to talk about something. I went with Rahul actually, Rahul Patel there, and he forgot his passport, and he came there with his driver's license, which is supposed to be able to pass through, because at that time we had the European Union thing. And the border guard turned around to us and said, "All right, I'm going to let you through because it's the law. But for me, you are not British. You are an African." That's what he said to us at the time. He turned around and told us that. And I thought I think it represented, there's nothing wrong with being an African, by the way, in terms of what he's saying. I think we're all Africans in that way. But
I was born in Kenya, and born in Nairobi, Kenya, on the driving license.
Yeah, he's basically saying you're not British, really. That's what he was saying. No matter what happens, you are an African, in that sense. And that's what you're saying. But I think the most important thing is that people challenge that. That it's actually challenged. It's not accepted. And we shouldn't accept it. And we are going to take the government to court, by the way, because to stamp your passport, to stamp your passport and say you can't go to France means you can't, it'll affect going to America, to all kinds of different places. We're not going to accept that. We're going to deliver the aid. We're not going to accept the argument they put forward, and we're not going to give up that argument about how, because technically they're insisting that they've got the right to treat people like that. The convoy is going to demand. Jim Nichol is taken and got lawyers together. If this happened to you, please report it to us, because we want our money back. We want our money back because if we've got that money back, we're going to spend it on the people that need it, and which are the refugees. But something more important, actually. The reason why they did it, they told us at the border, they said there are two things going on in France why we don't want you to go. One, you're going there and they'll give the refugees the wrong idea that they've got support and solidarity. And the other thing he said, there were 1 million people out on strike and they were all over the streets. He goes, we're really busy. And then Micheline was there, I said good, right? And the reason why I said good is because the solidarity is both ways, because it shows us both that we were going to be met by somebody from the CNT, the union there, to meet us, because it showed the question of making that solidarity there and here. And the real question about July the 26th is that I think there's going to be a cry of rage in this country about what's been going on. You see, people, the small little racists can come up and they can pop their heads up. But if you've ever played that game at the fair, when their racist head keeps popping up and you keep banging it down, we still have to keep doing that. But I think there's a tide of people who want to do it on a much greater scale than we've ever seen before. The task we face is how to organise that to make sure that happens. I think thousands of people can come on that demonstration. Not only that, I think they can come from different unions, different communities, and we're going to put refugees right in the centre of it. Why? Because we want more refugees. Britain's taken a tiny percentage of the refugees. There's a man called Lord Dubs, I don't know if people know, who survived from the Holocaust. You know what he told me? He said the worst thing that happened, and they all told me this kinder transport, was that he had to leave his brothers and friends and people like that on the train station, and they didn't survive. They didn't survive, and he said he'd never see that happen again in his lifetime. Never see that happen again in his lifetime. I'm telling you now, this generation has to take that task to make sure never again is about defending refugees, but also about fighting the far right, so that their argument for the solution doesn't get to be the question. It's not despair, it's hope that we've got to give people, because collectively we can challenge that, and in the process of that, actually it makes you feel confident. We were rejected at the border, but I tell you what, on that demonstration, I didn't feel rejected. I felt strong, because there were other people around me who were chanting, and also we closed down the port. I remember them telling me, do you realise how much money we're losing? Yeah. I said, well, let us through then, right? But I then thought to myself, imagine that port closed down for hours by the dock workers and by other people. Imagine they closed the trains, imagine they did that. The power's there. The power's there for the people to end austerity, but it's also there to fight against racism as well. And I think that's part of the reason why we should be organised socialists. We have to be people that support Jeremy Corbyn, but we also have to be people that fight for a better world. As long as 1% of people own 99% of the wealth, it's going to be a continuation of that, because those greedy bastards, the only thing they fundamentally care about, sorry for swearing, there's children here, the only thing they care about is themselves, and we have to change this world as it stands now, but it starts with solidarity and the confidence of what people have done. So thank you very much.